Hey folks, and welcome to Traveler Tuesday. I am Ardwulf. Today we're going to have a look at the Trailing Frontier. This is a item for Mongoose Traveler Second Edition from Mongoose Publishing, which I have just obtained in its physical version. We're going to have a look at the digital version today because that makes presenting the video quite a bit easier. This is a thicker hardcover. The PDF runs to 266 pages. Physical version, but both versions come with maps, whether you get digitally or not, but the physical version comes with a big poster map that is two-sided. There are two sectors in this book, the Lay sector and the Gateway sector. Now, these were both sectors that were done back in the day of Classic Traveler by Judges Guild, then were redone by one of the companies supporting the Traveler D20 edition back in the day. That book is called Gateway to Destiny. It covered these two sectors and two additional sectors. The only time four sectors in Traveler have been dealt with in a single book. Mongoose has been doing two per book for the most part, so we're going to look at their latest today. It's actually not the latest. The latest is the Deep Dark, which we already took a look at. So we'll be looking at that in more detail when I get the physical copy, but that won't be out for a while. So the Trailing Frontier, we start out, again, it's a 266-page hardcover book if you buy the physical version. I'll point out that if you buy the physical versions through Mongoose directly, you get the PDFs as well, which is why I generally buy them through Mongoose. We get an introduction, a history of the Trailing Frontier. Now, I'm not going to pull up Traveler Map because I'm not set up to do it right now, but this is on the opposite side of the Third Imperium than the Spinward Marches is. It's an area in which, instead of the Aslan and the Vargar are kind of the major non-human civilizations in the area, you have the Hivers and the Kukri instead. And as we can see from the maps here, the Lay sector is mostly inside the Third Imperium, mostly. You have this Luriani Cultural Association here. We'll talk about the Luriani in a bit. And then the Gateway sector is entirely outside the Third Imperium, and this is in kind of the borderland between 2,000 worlds, the Kukri Interstellar Empire, and the Third Imperium. So, to the book, we get a history of this Trailing Frontier. All right, so here's like the big context map. Here you have the Third Imperium. Here you have the 2,000 worlds, and again, that's the Kukri. Got Gateway sector here, Lay sector here. The other two sectors that were handled in the old T20 book were Glimmerdrift Reaches and Crucis Margin, both of which were also handled by Judges Guild back in the day. Now, the material nowadays is considerably revised from where Judges Guild had left it back in the day. I have those products. I don't think particularly highly of them. I think if we look at the non-GDW sector books, I think there were better ones that were published than these. But being what it is, down here we have the Hivers. So we got more history here: the rise of the Villani, the consolidation wars, the fall of the Villani, the rule of man. That's the ramshackle empire or Second Imperium. The cat is demanding attention. Twilight, that is going to be the end of the rule of man. The long night is the long interregnum between the Second and Third Imperiums. Talk about the coming of the Third Imperium, Civil War, the Soleimani Rim War, which is not terribly long ago. It's about 120 years in the past, 110 years in the past, based on the notional current date of 1105. That is the imperial calendar. Post-war, post-Soleimani Rim War, the plunge. Here's a big timeline, quite a lot of timeline, actually, 3 pages of timeline. So quite a lot of timeline here. People of the Trailing Frontier. We have a discussion about humans, the Jonkerine, the genetic manipulation carried out by the Third Imperium, the Luriani, which is a human minor race that is adapted for aquatic environments, and they have a kind of a long history, and they have their own sort of semi-autonomous cultural association inside the Third Imperium. The Siddites, one of the most divergent of human subspecies. They have 4 arms. They have like 2 big arms and 2 little arms. There are a bunch of non-humans, including the Akid. A lot of new non-humans around here that you don't see out in the direction of the Spinward Marches generally. The Capri. We have the Droashav, the Far, a variety of uplifted species, most of which will have been, or all of which will have been uplifted by Soleimani. We have apes, dolphins, and orca, and the Ursa. Here's the Vargar, technically uplifted, but they were uplifted by the ancients. And they're do we have a go back to the map here? Don't really see it, but the Vargar extents are kind of dangling just into the edge of the map here. So we should expect to see a decent Vargar population in this general vicinity. This is a picture of a Kukri. So back to peoples, into the Vargar. Here's the wandering people. They're the sort of mantis-like individuals. They're fairly interesting as well. Here is a discussion of the Third Imperium. We get a big discussion about the Luriani and their interactions with the Third Imperium here. Imperial administration and other services. There's how the scouts are acting, how the Navy are acting, how the Army are acting, and other Imperial forces. Here's the Lords of Thunder, which is kind of a fringe faction of Kukri that believes that everybody meaning the Kukri should get up and massacre everybody else that eats meat, because that is a thing that the Kukri are generally aligned with. The Lords of Thunder are the most reactionary in that sense. And they become kind of a big deal in the new era, the like post new era timeline, but nobody's really doing anything with that part of the timeline right now. Local powers. So we have the Kur League, the Gallian Federation, the Trindle Confederacy, the Plavian League. We've got little mini map inserts. It's a good place for this map so you can see kind of the spatial relationship between these different minor powers. Hachikan People's Assembly, the Viard Concourse. There's some pretty cool small states, small to mid-sized states. Mid-sized being quite a lot smaller than, say, the Third Imperium or the 2000 Worlds or whatever. Here's the Mesugard Corporate, the Swanfey Confederacy, and the Union. We get some details on all these. Non-state organizations, the Church of Stellar Divinity. It's good to see them back. This is a interstellar religion that's kind of interesting. That's kind of been developed a little bit in the Third Imperium materials in the past. Variety of other non-governmental entities here: Corsairs and private pirates, Equal Sentience Movement, Imperial Megacorporations. We're going to get discussions of a bunch of these. The Loyal Sector Guard, Free People's Alliance, the Long Night Remembrance, which is an anti-Soleimani movement. The Matarishan Freedom Movement, and there's non-imperial Uper corporations. An Uper corporation. Okay, we got the Deep Night Corporation. That's intriguing here. This will take some looking at here. Now we get into the individual sectors. We're going to do Lay sector first here. We're going to get an introduction to this sector. Now, in general, in Traveler, really to run a campaign, you need a subsector. Based on some assumptions that are common in Traveler, like you'll be traveling around to different planets, you can get away with a subsector. A sector is as much or more than you'll ever need, right? So if you find a sector that you like out of one of these books that you think would be an interesting place to set a campaign, that you got more than enough material. Also, I'll point out, for those who don't know, the Traveler map at travelermap.com is an amazing resource, which you should definitely take a look at, whether you play Traveler or not, frankly. So here's a mini map, one-page map of Lay sector without any of the system information, but showing you the spatial relationships of what's going on and where all the borders are. We now will transition into a treatment of the individual subsectors in Lay sector, and these will follow the standard Mongoose format. You're going to get a map, which is relatively attractive. You're going to get a list of UWPs, of systems or main worlds in this particular subsector, and then you'll have a discussion of the subsector and then a little zoom in on specific systems or, again, main worlds in that subsector, usually 2 to 4 per subsector. In this case, we've got a closer look at Kirishi, Lusan, and Iknaten, internal subsector of the Imperium. Okay, so this is the subsector itself, actually. Money and politics, that's interesting. There's the Nightmare subsector. We got a couple of different planets here. And, any of these are going to be high on the adventure hooks. The Noir Deep subsector, which is largely empty. The Grathian subsector. I'm much less familiar with these places than I am with, say, the Spinward Marshes or Soleimani Rims, so if I stumble over some of the pronunciation, that'd be why. Rift Exploration Mission. So there's the Scout Service is going to be fairly busy out this way. Plus, there are privatized exploration efforts going on as well. Spearhead subsector. You can see this is relatively congested. We've got a number of planets here. Actually, there's only two planets here, Ash Maze and Weston. I suspect that these are set up when they lay the books out to accommodate a specific um, number of pages per subsector. Here's the Guadix Drift subsector, which is, again, reasonably highly populated. I don't know about populated, but there's a decent number of systems here. Get some details on that. Titan Storm, the Osiris Deep, cool subsector names, High Lord subsector. And once again, as we continue to go through this, you'll get some individual write-ups, not incredibly detailed, but more than enough to give you adventure ideas of some specific planets that are in these subsectors. Usually, like I said, 2 to 4. The Tarishan subsector. We're well into it at this point. This little key here shows you which subsector in the lay sector this particular subsector is. So this is subsector J, Matarishan. Okay. And you'll sometimes get creatures and stuff like that, or even ships sometimes. Frontier Worlds. Frontier Worlds is the name of the subsector here. Because it lies on the Imperial fringe, you can actually see the Imperial border right here. Okay. Here's the Saturesia subsector. Outroamer subsector. There's a critter of some kind. Diamond Prince subsector, 30 star systems. Outworld subsector. Now, a lot of these sectors were originally generated randomly and appeared in Atlas of the Imperium, an old GDW product. Nowadays, the best place for that data itself, like the UWPs and stuff, is Traveler Map, because you can see like absolutely everything. If you have fooled with it at all, too, you'll be able to tell which sectors have like vetted data and like up-to-date data, and which are still in review, in some cases for a long time. A lot of times those in review subsectors will have appeared in a third-party product in the 80s, and it needs to be gone through. Mongoose in the second edition has started to redo some of that stuff with this book, with the Deep in the Dark, parts of which had appeared before under the Keith brothers as part of the Cargonaut Press thing, and parts of which had come out from Paranoia Press, I believe. Well, here's the Gateway sector, and of course, here we are in non-big nation state space here. We have a number of, again, small to mid-sized interstellar states, including the Plavian League and the Gallian Federation and the Viard Concourse. I particularly always liked the Viard Concourse. So again, we get some details on the sector itself, and then we jump right in to the subsectors. And if we look at this, you'll notice that this is quite a bit like thinner. The stellar density in Gateway is lower than it is in Lay sector. There's some fairly dense subsectors in Lay. There's really not any dense subsectors here in Gateway. So if you want kind of more spread out stuff, maybe you want to confine the player's ability to roam to a single like jump one main or something like that. This is a pretty good place to do that, as opposed to giving them like much larger mains elsewhere, including in Lay sector. So once again, we're going to go through the individual systems here, or subsectors, I should say. The Dark Sky subsector only gets one planet, but there's only 4 systems in the whole place. The Attune subsector gets quite a bit more. Planetary Takeover and Resistance. A little discussion of that topic. That's interesting. Denkard subsector. Some stuff on here. There's some conflict here on Tarakan. The Lotan subsector. One of the denser subsectors in Gateway, to be honest. Here's the Bensarada project. The Abysm subsector. There's only 2 systems here, so not very heavily populated. And we get one system discussed here. HAT products is half-assed terraforming projects. This is interesting. This is very interesting. Okay. Then we get this breakdown of the UWP for Splinter. I think this is there just for illustrative purposes. I mean, if you can see the UWP here, you don't really need to look it up here unless you're still familiarizing yourself with UWP format, which is a position you'll be in for a little while until you kind of memorize whatever. The Wind Fleet subsector, the ones that are hard to memorize are actually, I mean, like size and atmosphere and hydrosphere, there's more of whatever it's measuring, the higher the value is. Population is the same way. Government type is a little more intricate. You need to kind of memorize that. Atmosphere, when you start getting into the high numbers as well, that's true of. And then law level is just a measure of law, abstract law level. So it's just another more is more type of metric. Here's the Wind Fleet subsector. The Halverson's Rocks controversy, very interesting. This is an interesting asteroid base of some kind. Castra subsector. Castra is, of course, Latin for camp. That's interesting. I wonder if that informs the subsector in any way. Corset subsector. Kind of motor our way to the back here as we continue to plow through different subsectors. So there's a lot of detail here. While I haven't read the book from cover to cover, I like what I see so far. And generally speaking, I've had a reasonably high opinion of the sector books that Mongoose has done for Mongoose Traveler Second Edition. And I appreciate that they're trying to get a lot of sectors covered as well. They are making the most serious effort at that than anybody else that's done Traveler has ever done. High Guard, Trailing Frontier. So this will be Starship stuff, including a bunch of weapons. This is interesting. Pretty nice illustrations of the weapons as well. Here's vehicle bays, vehicle maintenance bay, spacecraft. Okay, so we got a section of Imperial ships. We have a fighter. Auklar Savosky fighter. Okay, the HS-10. This is a 10-ton fighter. It looks kind of like you'd expect a fighter to look. These certainly appear to be atmosphere capable. Here's a Rift Trader, which is a 900-ton ship. Looks like it's a loosely inspired by the Fat Trader, the subsidized merchant. Here's some Galleon Federation ships. That's interesting. They got kind of an interesting look to them, very industrial looking. Deep Space Operations vessel. This is a 2,000-ton ship. What is this ship for? So this is a support vessel for other deep space craft, or as a transport for long-range cargoes. And we can see that it is a Jump 2 ship. So it looks like that ×4 indicate that switchable fuel or cargo modules ×4. Okay, so you can actually put some fuel modules in here and get more fuel, potentially multiple jumps as well, but you'd have to figure that out. Pretty big, spacious ship, probably at the higher end of what you'd want players to be flying around, I would think, depending on the campaign format, of course. Here's a prospecting shuttle, which is a 60-ton shuttle, a mining shuttle. Mobile extraction facility of 4,000 tons. Very interesting. Here's a galleon cruiser of 12,000 tons. Probably one of the larger vessels of the Galleon Federation, you'd think. Here's the Mesugard Corporate. So there's a lot of ships back here, too. Cargo lighters, gunship merchants. Pretty big, too. 1,840 tons. Mesugard Meson emplacement. That's pretty cool, actually. There's a ground-mounted, it looks like, Mason gun, Rank Guard Union vessel. So a lot of these little nation states out in Gateway especially have special ships that of their own unique design. The Beckhand Super Freighter, 40,000 tons. That's pretty big. 400-ton orbital defense platform. Pretty cool with that here. Gunships. Covert operations platform. Here's some adventure stuff in the Trailing Frontier. To avoid spoilers, we'll blow through this very quickly, but pick the book up if you're interested. Former Archduke Stephen in the Loyal Sector Guard. Mysteries of the Trailing Frontier. That's going to be Sweden. And the Lords of Thunder, of course, which is a kind of, like I said, a big hook that gets used. That got used by Martin Doherty in sort of the post-New Era development. I'm not really a huge fan of the way that played out, but that's not Martin Doherty's fault. I wasn't happy with how it was playing out when GDW was still in charge of it, to be fair. At the back, we have a perfunctory index. This index, let's speed forward to the table of contents really quickly here. Like the table of contents, is not that good. I would like to see this improved. I'd like to see different types of headings employed and a more complete table of contents. This combined with a shoddy index, and that is absolutely an index that's generated in Microsoft Word or the equivalent. This is both our areas, both table of contents and the index are areas that I'd like to see Mongoose improve substantially. It's a relatively minor complaint. I like these books. I'm happy to continue supporting Mongoose, blah, blah, blah. But I'd like to see them improve their tables of contents and indices. The index in this is not worth the literal page that it is printed on. However, the Trailing Frontier in general, I have it physically in my hands now. I am very happy with print quality and all that. The book's nice, and I'm pretty happy with the material that is in here. And I will note that Martin Doherty is the person that wrote this book, and he is also the person responsible for the earlier Traveler D20 book, Gateway to Destiny, which dealt with this and 2 other sectors. This will bring the timeline kind of up because that book was set like in the general period of the Soleimani Rim War, as I recall. This is set in the more or less standard classic era, which is 1105 or thereabouts, so just before the Fifth Frontier War happens canonically. Don't be beholden to the canonical timeline, though, man. Just, use it for what it's doing for you, and if it's not doing anything for you, then just dump it and let your players, if nothing else, decide what happens.
Massive thanks to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, whose support and encouragement make what we do at Ardwulf's Lair possible. Thank you, patrons. Links to help support the channel are in the video description, so check out the Patreon, the Ko-Fi, and the merch store, where you can get snazzy Ardwulf's Lair t-shirts, drinking vessels, and other cool swag. There is also an affiliate link for Noble Knight Games in the video description. If you buy stuff through that affiliate link, it helps us support the channel with Noble Knight store credit. Thank you, Noble Knight. Until next time, thanks for watching, and happy gaming.